All right. This morning, we are going to continue our sermon series entitled, It's All About Relationships. I heard the story about a couple. They went over a friend's house for a dinner party, and there was a bunch of couples sitting around, and they were all just chit-chatting, having the regular dinner table talk kind of stuff. And somehow or another, the entire conversation turned toward marriage counseling. And they were talking about going to marriage counselors, and the one young man and his wife, he jumped in and said, you know what? My wife and I, we will never need marriage counseling. And the other person said, well, why? Why would you say you never need to go to marriage counseling? He said, well, because when my wife went to college, she majored in communication, and I majored in theater. He said, so my wife does a very good job communicating, and I do a good job acting like I'm listening. So over the last 4 weeks, we have been talking about how to build strong, healthy relationships. And this morning, I want to focus on communication. Because in reality, all relationships are fueled by communication. We need to have good, strong, healthy communication in order to have good, strong, healthy relationships. Now let me ask you, have you ever needed the guidance or the expertise of an expert? Have you ever done this? I did that just this weekend, okay? I have my faucet in my kitchen sink is not working properly. Okay, I know better. And yet, here I am, I look at this project and I think to myself, I can do that. It's not that difficult. And so I climb under there, I disconnect everything, I'm doing everything I think that needs to be done. I go back and forth to Home Depot a half a dozen different times, trying to get the parts that I need, always buying the wrong one. I spend hours on the sink on my back trying to get the thing back together, only to turn the water on, turn the garbage disposal on, and watch water spray all over the place underneath my sink. You've been there, right? We need the guidance, the direction, the expertise of someone who knows what they're doing. I've shared this with you before. A true story. Years ago, when we lived up in Ohio, I decided to redo our kitchen. I thought to myself, how hard could it possibly be to hang kitchen cabinets? Right? 4 screws, it's done. I tore out all the cabinets, I tore out the countertop, I tore out everything. About 7 months later, my wife made me hire a contractor to put the kitchen back together because something about she was being sick and tired of washing dishes in the bathtub. I don't know what it was. But we need the guidance and the direction of an expert at times. Well, this morning, we're going to go, the expert is Jesus. And so this morning, we are going to look to Jesus to see what he teaches about good communication. Because in all honesty, we've all been here, haven't we? We've all found ourselves in the doghouse at some point in time, where something comes out of our mouth, we say something that as soon as you said it, you go, ooh, I wish I wouldn't have said that. Because you knew it was either perceived wrong or what you said was just downright wrong. And we've all found ourselves in the doghouse. Now, we are in a communication revolution right now. Okay, with all of social media and with cell phones, we can talk to people around the country, around the world. And it's like they're right next door. I remember years ago, back when I was in the military, I was stationed in Kaneohe, Hawaii. It was a very difficult duty station. But I was in Kaneohe, Hawaii, and my wife was in St. Louis. At that time, we were just dating. I remember I would go to the payphone. This is before cell phones, for some of our younger generation. Okay. I remember Sprint had like this 18-digit number that you would dial in beforehand, and then you would dial the telephone number, and I'd say, hey, babe, how are you? And there was like a 3-second pause before she said, hi. And then she'd say something, and there'd be like a 3-second pause. And nowadays, we can open up our cell phone, and we can talk to people, or Facebook, or FaceTime, or go in a chat room with people around the world, and instantly we're connected. Okay, I stumbled across this a couple years back. This actually comes out of a real text page, okay? It says, it's a group chat. It says, how's it going? Hello, fine, and you? Great. No. Hello, Luke? Hi, Ray. Hi, Ladybug. Hi. Hi to all. Are you married? Okay, we've got this communication revolution going on where we can talk to people in an instant. And yet, even though we have the technology, even though we have the ability to do it, oftentimes we lack the principles of good communication. Have you ever been on a text message and you didn't fully understand what they said to you? Or you could read a text message twice, and both times you read it, you take away different emotions, or you read into it differently. And so even though we've got the technology, oftentimes we don't have the principles of good communication. Communication, once again, is the fuel of relationships. For instance, as an illustration, pick a car, any car. Pick your dream car. Okay, if I could pick one, this might be the one I would pick, okay? Relationships are like a fine automobile like that. I mean, that could be in your driveway. You could wax it and you could polish it, and it could be sparkling, and it could look absolutely, positively beautiful. But if there's no fuel in the tank, it's not going to go anywhere. Without fuel, that beautiful piece of machinery is not going to go down the road. It's not going to be able to perform the way that it was designed and created to perform. I'll maintain that many relationships look good on the outside, but you know what? They're not going anywhere because they lack the fuel. No fuel, no go. No good communication, your relationship is not going to grow and be all that it can be. And when you think about communication, I mean, it's really kind of this artistic kind of quality. It's not really mathematical. Meaning, you could say the same 5 words 2 different times. And by the way that you say them, or by your nonverbal communication, or even by the tone of voice that you use, it can be perceived in 2 completely and totally different ways. And so what does Jesus teach us about good communication? Because straight up, in many of our relationships, what we have is a failure to communicate. Okay, we have a failure to communicate. So what does good, strong, healthy communication look like? Well, the foundation of good communication is trust. Trust. We need to have trust. And as soon as you introduce a little white lie, that's what we call them, isn't it? A little white lie. I mean, after all, it wasn't that big. It was just a little bit of a mistruth. Or maybe I didn't give all the information that I should have gave, and I withheld just a little bit of information. And as soon as we introduce just even a little white lie into any relationship, all of a sudden the other person is always questioning. They're always questioning, are they telling me the truth or not? Do I have all the information or am I lacking something? How do I know what to believe? Just even that little mistruth, and all of a sudden you're asking, how do I know what is true and what is not? In Matthew 5, Jesus says, all you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. Let your yes be yes and your no's no. Again, in John chapter 8, it says that Satan is the father of all lies. Jesus said, just let your yes be yes and your no's no. Anything else comes from Satan. Proverbs says it like this: a wicked messenger falls into trouble, but a trustworthy envoy brings healing. So a wicked messenger, somebody who gives a falsehood, what do they bring? They bring destruction, they bring hurt, they bring pain. But somebody who speaks the truth, somebody who is trustworthy, they bring healing. They bring peace. They bring joy. And so my question for you this morning is, what do you have to say or do to get people to believe you? Because in our culture today, we watch the news or we watch politicians or public figures get up and speak. And we're always scratching our head going, I wonder what the real message is. Are they telling the truth? We'll turn on news media, no matter what news station you watch. I mean, you find yourself doing this? I go from news station to news channel to news channel, trying to figure out the entire story, trying to pieces, parts it all together kind of thing. Here in the Tampa Bay area, we have that thing called PolitiFacts, right? A politician or a public figure, they make a statement, and then this newspaper reporter or this news person, they will research what the politician or the public figure said. And then they'll come on and they'll tell you whether the statement was true or false. But I watch that and I'm questioning the news reporter. Is the news reporter telling me the truth? Are they giving the full picture or are they withholding information? Have you ever found yourself saying something like, I swear it's true? Or honestly, what happened is, or you can believe me this time. When we make statements like that, what are we saying? We're saying historically, you know what? I have not been a person of the highest integrity. Historically, maybe I did withhold information, or I did, tell a little white lie. Do you speak with integrity? In your relationships, do you speak with integrity? because our lies are always present in the absence of truth. Here's some of America's top lies. I've shared this with you before. The check is in the mail, right? I'll start my diet. How come you guys know these all so well? One size fits. Okay, this is a little bit more difficult. Your luggage is not lost, it's only misplaced. That's right. Okay? You erode trust through lies. Even those little white lies erode the foundation of the house, and ultimately the relationship will collapse. You erode trust through flattery. What is flattery? I mean, it's positive lies. I mean, have you ever, somebody's flattering you and you know it? Yeah, have you ever been there, experienced that? You're thinking, yeah, right. Okay, if you look up the definition of flattery is this: excessive and insincere praise, especially given to further one's own interests. In other words, the reason that people use flattery is it's self-serving. They're trying to make a deposit into their own bank. They're trying to build up themselves in your eyes. The psalmist writes this in Psalm 12. Everyone lies to their neighbor. They flatter with their lips, but harbor deception in their hearts. May the Lord silence all flattering lips. One translation says, may the Lord rip the lips off. That just sounds painful. You erode trust through flattery. You erode trust through broken promises. And we've all been there and done that, haven't we? I mean, have you ever noticed how easy it is to break a promise to a child? When we say we're going to do something, we're going to be somewhere, and then all of a sudden you don't do it because something else comes along? So when you fall short, when you tell those little white lies, or you're using flattery, or you've even broken a promise, what do? How do we restore the relationship? One, I'll maintain, we just need to be honest. We need to admit it. If you messed up, you need to say, I messed up. You ask for forgiveness. You repent. In other words, you do a 180. If you can go back and fix it and change it, you do it. And you don't do it again. But I think in order for us to restore a relationship, we need to be honest with each other. I think you restore, or you erode trust through silence, through not sharing. Okay, and men, guys, stereotypically, straight up, this is us. Stereotypically, we're the ones who remain silent. We're the ones who don't talk. Have you ever, don't raise your hands, but have you ever been there? Okay, your significant other, your spouse, somebody's talking to you, and you're even telling yourself, just be quiet. Just be quiet. Don't say a word. Just look at them in the eyes and don't say anything. Okay, or all of a sudden you just start stonewalling, meaning you start counting the ceiling tiles kind of thing. Okay, in all honesty, stereotypically, men do not deal with stress as well as females. Females can deal with stress a whole lot better than guys can. Now at work, men can deal with stress at work because there's structure. You know who you can mouth off to, you know who you can't. At work, there's rules. But when you come home, there are no rules in the relationship, or at least nothing that's written down. And so what happens is men become overwhelmed, and oftentimes instead of sharing, instead of talking, they just clam up, and they basically stonewall. Which means they'll just kind of put up this big barrier in front of them. And they'll try to back out of the conversation as quickly as they possibly can. Okay. You cannot have a high level of communication without a high level of trust. And so how do you restore trust? I mean, you may have been the one to break it. But how do you restore trust in a relationship? Well, here's a couple of things that we can put into practice, okay? One, stop arguing about the past. Don't argue about the details of what previously took place. Instead, focus on the future. Have a vision for your relationship. Focus on the hopeful. Say, this is where we're at today, and now we want to be over here. So how do we get there? Because when you focus on the past, everybody has revisionist history. I mean, have you ever experienced this? You sit back and you rewrite history in your mind to suit what you want. We all have revisionist history. And so you don't argue about points that took place in the past. You look toward the future. Okay, that's one of the ways that we continue to restore trust. This is a picture of my house up in Ohio. 11 years ago, right before we moved down here, okay, my house in Ohio, we had a basement. You guys know what a basement is? They're great, okay, because you can put stuff down in there. Your laundry can go. I mean, it's wonderful. Anyway, so we had a basement. And as soon as we moved down to Florida, our house was up for sale and everything else, all of a sudden I had a foundation issue. The walls of my basement shifted and they began to collapse. Okay, and if the foundation collapsed, the entire house would collapse. Okay, so obviously I had to get the contractors involved, and it was difficult and it was messy to repair. They dug all around the basement of my house. They knocked down sheds. There was dirt and piles of debris everywhere. The contractors were going in and out of my basement. They tore my basement up. I mean, it was just downright ugly from every aspect. It took several weeks for them to get it back up. But you know what? Once it was done, that house was stronger than ever before because the foundation was strong. We need to build strong foundations in our relationships. Have you ever noticed it's easier to lose trust than it is to gain it? It's like going to school for our students. You know, you tank a test, you get an F or a low grade on a test, and it seems like your overall grade drops significantly. And then to get that grade back up, it takes an awful lot of work, it seems like. You know, it fell very quickly, but it takes a lot to get it back up kind of thing. Well, the same thing is true with our relationships. Trust can erode very quickly, but if you put the time, the energy, and the effort into it, you build up those foundations, you're going to be blessed. I'll maintain that communication, when you look at Scripture, communication comes from the heart. Matthew chapter 12. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. The mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Have you ever had a slip of the tongue where as soon as you said it, you go, ooh, that's not good? Or you say something that's harmful or hurtful, that was mean, maybe mean-spirited? You know, and as soon as it comes out of your mouth, you know it, and you find yourself having one of those regrettable instances where if you could go back and change it, you would have done it immediately. Jesus says in Mark, nothing outside a person can defile them by going into them. Rather, it's what comes out of a person that defiles them. Another translation, the Living Bible, which is a paraphrased version, says it like this. Your souls aren't harmed by what you eat, by about what you think and say. See, when we say those harmful things, okay, Jesus is saying that there's this vicious cycle, this vicious circle that takes place here. That when we speak those harmful words, we're not only hurting someone else, but you know what? It hurts us as well. It tears apart at our soul. Heard the story about an older gentleman who was out jogging. And he went to the local high school, and he was jogging around the track. Okay? And so in the middle of the field was the football team. And the football coach, he has his players running wind sprints from one end of the field to the other. They're to run as fast as they can. They get to the other end, they take a few seconds break, and they run as fast as they can across the field again. Well, the coach saw this older gentleman running around the track, and he told his team, you know what? You can run faster and longer than that older gentleman on the track. And so he told his team, you guys are going to do wind sprints as long as he's jogging around the track. At the same time, the older gentleman is thinking, well, I can't run as fast as those kids can, but I bet I can run longer than they can. And he's just jogging around the track, and he keeps going and keeps going. Finally, he wore out, and he threw his hands up and just kind of came to a stop, to which then all of a sudden the football team stopped running as well. Several football members walked over to him and said, sir, we sure are glad you stopped running. Because our coach said, you guys can run wind sprints as long as that old man is jogging around the track. So thank you for stopping. You know, in order to break that vicious cycle, focus on the positive. Focus on the positive in your relationships. So often we focus on everything that's wrong. We nitpick and we tear down. Focus on what is good. Build each other up. I've said before, and I'm going to do this real quick. You know, if you're ever in a conversation and it's become heated, it's escalating, you're starting to argue, your voices are starting to rise, you kind of got this attitude going on, you want to fight? Okay, let's fight, let's argue. And all of a sudden you're screaming at each other, and or your voices are elevated, and you bring in your mother-in-law, and you say, your mother-in-law did this. Okay, straight up, nothing good is going to come from that conversation. Okay, when you're elevated, when you're arguing, that's when you're going to say and do something that's destructive. I shared with you a technique, call a timeout. For 50 minutes, you stop the conversation. You go off to your happy place. You kind of rest and relax a little bit. Physiologically, it takes 50 minutes for your body to calm down. Then you come back and finish the conversation. Maybe you need to go away twice and come back twice in order to finish that conversation. The key is you calm down and then you come back and finish. So let me ask you, can you see some place in your life where you're caught up in this vicious cycle of words? Maybe it's at work, maybe it's at home or with friends. Can you catch yourself in that vicious cycle of words? How do you break the pattern? Well, I think in order to break the pattern of vicious words, you know what we need to do? We need to change our heart. Because, right, it comes from the heart. Isn't that what Jesus said? And so we need to change our heart. So how do you refocus our heart? How do we change our heart so we can speak those positive words? You know, Jesus said through Matthew, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So I think one of the ways that we refocus our heart is we change the focus of where our treasure is. My heart is refocused by relocating my treasure. In other words, practically, I think what we need to do is we need to examine our priorities. Thank you. Okay. What are your priorities in life? Okay, because we say the right things, don't we? Oh, my priority is my relationship with God, or my priority is my spouse, or my priority is my kids and my family and my relationships. We say the right thing continually, but in reality, where do we put our time, our energy, and our effort? Oftentimes, we put them in the wrong focus, and oftentimes we focus on stuff, don't we? We focus on stuff, all the minutia of life. We end up focusing so much time and energy and effort on the stuff that doesn't add up to a hill of beans. And the people that we love the most are oftentimes the ones we hurt the easiest because we take them for granted. Where do you need to refocus your life? Okay, what needs to change? Where do you need to refocus? Thirdly, I think communication that makes a positive impact is honest. Okay, honest. An honest answer is like a kiss on the lips. Remember, flattery is like ripping lips off. Which one do you want? You want the kiss on the lips or you want to have your rip, which one do you want? Communication is honest. And honest means you're able to tell the truth. Honest means that you're thoughtful with your truth. You're thoughtful with it. I hear people like this. They say, I just like to tell it like it is. I just lay it down. I tell them what it is. I don't hold back any punches. They don't tell the truth. They aim the truth, like aiming a double-barrel shotgun, and they just want to overwhelm you with it. You know somebody like that? Where they just tell it like it is, regardless of how you feel. You know what we call that? Rude. Rude. Don't be rude. We speak the truth in love. We speak the truth in love. You know, when you have a conversation with somebody, and you know it's going to maybe be a little bit conflictual or you don't see eye to eye, a soft startup. You don't waylay them with it. A soft startup. Okay, when you have a soft startup, you normally have a good conversation and it ends softly. You normally come to a conclusion. On the reverse, if you come in with a very harsh startup, okay, where you're very abrasive kind of thing, the conversation normally doesn't go so well and it ends in conflict. It's called the law of reciprocity. If you're nice to somebody, if you speak kind words, sooner or later, maybe not immediately, but sooner or later, they're going to speak kindly back. It's the law of reciprocity. We speak the truth in love. My friends, your words are powerful. Your words can knock someone's self-esteem or suck the hope out of them. You can tear somebody down or you can build someone up. But to be honest means that you're clear with the truth. We've got these contracts and legal documents that, have you ever read one? 37 pages long. I can read through it and not understand a word it says. I know there's an attorney out there someplace along the line that understands what it says, but we don't. Okay, and oftentimes we can be very ambiguous and unclear and politically correct, that we're just kind of going all over the place, and we're not speaking the truth clearly. Jesus spoke the truth. He spoke it clearly, and he spoke it in love. And he says in Ephesians, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs. We build each other up. And when you look throughout the scripture, Jesus always spoke honestly. He always spoke lovingly, but oftentimes he spoke very surprisingly. Okay, he commends a Gentile for his great faith in Matthew chapter 8. Then in Matthew chapter 14, he rebukes one of his apostles, Peter, after he has tried to walk on water for his little faith. I don't know about you, but when I read that, Peter was the only one who got out of the boat. All the others stayed in the boat. And Peter did walk on water for a few steps before he sank. And yet Jesus could see into his heart, and Jesus rebukes him for his little faith. Jesus, he calls the Pharisees snakes and hypocrites, and then he says, Father, forgive them. And then Jesus later on turned and looked at his disciples. He rebuked Peter and said, Get behind me, Satan. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. Jesus, he rebuked his friends sternly, and yet he loved them sacrificially. He gave his all. That our relationship with him could be made whole. That our relationship with him could be restored. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down his life for his friends. So in your relationships, do you want to impress or do you want to impact? Because your words are powerful. They're the single most important tool that you have in your relationship toolbox. Proverbs tells us that the power of the tongue has the power of life and death. Your words are oftentimes like a brick. I can take that brick and throw it through a window and cause destruction, or I could use that brick to build a home. The same thing is true of your words. You know that old saying, sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me? It's a lie. It's a lie. So how well balanced are your words? Do they build up or do they tear down? See, Jesus, throughout the scripture, he taught us how to make an impact with our words. So today, as you leave here, how can you use what you've learned here this morning to build up relationships? To whom do you need to offer words of healing? Who do you need to offer words of encouragement? Because if you want to make a change in a relationship, you do it with positive, not negative. And so my challenge for you this upcoming week is this, okay? I want to challenge you, schedule time. Schedule time to spend with your loved ones. Schedule time. Set some other stuff aside and just schedule some time to be with each other, to talk with each other. I've told this story before. When Suzanne and I first started dating, we had no money. We met in college, we had nothing. Every day, summer, spring, winter, fall, you named it, every day, we had this 4-mile walk that we would walk. And we would just talk and spend time with each other. Go for a walk. Spend some time. Sit down and have a couples meeting or a relationship meeting. Get a couple of cups of coffee and just sit down, or go out and get some iced tea with the entire family and just spend some time. And you know what? If you got to have a kind of a heated discussion, something heavily is weighing upon your heart, no sneak attacks. Nobody likes to get waylaid. If you got to have a heavy discussion, call it for what it is and say, hey, we need to have a serious discussion, and then you set time aside to do it. Let's do it tomorrow at 2 o'clock or whatever. And finally, have fun together. Have fun. If every time you guys come together and it's negative communication, you're complaining about something, or you're complaining about finances, or it's negative, and if every interaction you have is negative, what happens? You don't want to be around that person anymore. Have fun. I've shared with you research says 5 to 1. 5 positives for every 1 negative. And that's just to maintain a relationship. The masters of good relationships are 20 to 1. You need to have far more positive experiences in your relationships than negative. Communication, it's not easy. I know it's not. Okay? But Jesus said, I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he will bear much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. You see, as we stay connected to Jesus, as you grow in your relationship with him, you're going to grow in your relationships with each other. And you know what? You're going to be a blessing. You're going to be a blessing to each other. You're going to be a blessing to your family. You're going to be a blessing to your community. You're going to be a blessing to your world as we stay connected to him.